A fourth temporary restraining order against Illinois' gun ban is expected today in Effingham County, where attorney Thomas DeVore has filed a third case challenging the state's gun ban and magazine ban. So ultimately what you have here is yet another state-level case that's challenging Illinois' law that was enacted a month ago. It's now been a full month. Governor J.B. Pritzker enacting the gun and magazine ban and gun registry on January 10th. And then you had lawsuits that started to matriculate and get filed. If you recall, the first lawsuit that was actually filed was in Crawford County, and that was from an attorney, Thomas Magg. And that case challenged the law on Second Amendment grounds, but also on Fifth Amendment and 14th Amendment grounds. So not only did that first state-level lawsuit allege the law violated the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms, but it also violated the Fifth Amendment rights to remain silent and not incriminate yourself. And the 14th Amendment rights is the equal protections argument. So that was the first state-level case. And then, literally, I think that same afternoon, attorney Thomas DeVore filed his first case in state-level court against the gun and magazine ban in Effingham County. So that is, January 20th. I believe January 17th was when those cases were filed. All right. And then January 20th, Thomas DeVore was able to get an emergency hearing in the Effingham County case, where you then had a few days after that, the judge issuing a temporary restraining order against the gun and magazine ban. I believe that was on January 20th. Either way, within the past month, in the past 4 weeks, we've had at least 3 temporary restraining orders issued. The first being in the Effingham County case. The state, they appealed that. It then was upheld by the appellate court. So the Effingham County case became precedent for a White County decision to issue a temporary restraining order, which then became precedent for a Macon County judge to issue a temporary restraining order, which apparently is now precedent for a different Effingham County case that Thomas DeVore brought, his third case against this. But back to the Crawford County case, which was the first state-level case, that was transferred to federal court in the Southern District. And it seems to be that's going to be a case that's going to be lumped in with other federal cases. And we'll talk about those federal cases coming up here in a bit. But to the latest from Thomas DeVore last night, he did take to a live video to explain a bit of what's going on with the third case and how he says that this is going to be decided today. And there's really no need for a hearing because you have the precedent already set in the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals in Illinois.
We got a hearing from the judge in that case set for tomorrow, but we're not going to have the need for a hearing for tomorrow now because there's going to be an order entered without having to have that hearing, granting the temporary restraining order on behalf of all individually named plaintiffs in the case. And so I suspect first thing in the morning, sometime 9, 10, 11 o'clock, the judge is a busy man, I'm sure. He will sign the proposed order that we've already prepared and submitted to him, and that order will be entered, again, first thing tomorrow. As soon as it's entered, I will get it, and I will send a copy of it to each of you, whether you're an FFL or whether you're just a citizen who wants to exercise your rights and go buy something. You'll be free to do so as soon as the judge enters that order tomorrow, okay? So again, you're individually named plaintiffs in this case, and you can, without question, go out and acquire anything from any of these FFLs that want to sell to you.
So this is just, again, the third such case that DeVore's brought. He's charging a flat fee of $200 per individual. First case in Effingham County, he had 866 plaintiffs signed on to that, and the temporary restraining order only impacts those 866. Then the second case out of White County, that's for 1,690 plaintiffs, and the temporary restraining order there only impacting those plaintiffs named. In this Effingham County case, Thomas DeVore is, of course, getting that just for those named plaintiffs. In the Macon County case from Jerry Stocks and State Representative Dan Calkins, again, that is only for those who are named and for the group, the association, law-abiding gun owners of Macon County. So you've got these separate lawsuits in state courts that are only impacting certain individuals. Now, the ultimate goal is these are preliminary, temporary restraining orders. So it's just an initial view of the court saying there's merit to these arguments of equal protections being violated. In state level court, they're deciding they're going to halt the law just for the named plaintiffs while they figure out what's going on in the actual court proceedings. So we heard from Jerry Stocks yesterday that he is going to move for a declaratory judgment against the law, and that would be statewide. But in the meantime, it's only temporary right now for a select few who brought the lawsuit. But then you get into the federal courts, and that's where there are a lot of different cases. Some are possibly going to be either consolidated or put together in some fashion and then heard. But there are efforts to permanently block the measure while it advances through the court process, with the argument that it's a violation of the Second Amendment to prohibit the sale of certain semi-automatic firearms and also to prohibit the possession of certain capacities of magazines, let alone the issues of requiring you to register your firearm with state police. All of this, of course, within the last month since Governor J.B. Pritzker enacted the state's gun and magazine ban. And October 1st, so we're looking down at October 1st, that's when the window opens for you to register your already owned firearm with state police. You have to register that by January 1st, 2024. So are these cases going to be resolved before then? That's a big question that has yet to really be discovered, but some of the state level cases that have been argued and temporary restraining orders issued gives you a bit of an indication. If you look at some of the other cases from across the country that we've talked about in the past as well, including the case about whether domestic violence civil orders can keep somebody from having a gun, that was declared unconstitutional by a court judge. You've got another issue of whether or not cannabis users should be prevented from having firearms. That was also deemed unconstitutional by a court judge. So you've got these trajectories of how courts are deciding on these cases that can give you a little indication as to what exactly you can expect. But all of this, of course, is coming down to the wire because October 10th is just around the corner. So stay tuned. We will talk a little bit more about some of the differences between the Illinois State Rifle Association's federal lawsuit and a lawsuit that was brought by various gun dealers concerning the Second Amendment and whether or not you can sell. So stay tuned. Big shout out to Craig. He says he's listening from Dallas, Texas. Look at that. Listening to a Springfield, Illinois radio show that's streaming on the internet. It's amazing technology and how much it advances. All right, we're back and talking about the differences between several federal lawsuits. This, of course, after the news that Thomas DeVore fully expecting to get another restraining order against the state's gun ban in Effingham County for a third case that he's brought. It would be the fourth temporary restraining order issued against the state's gun ban. In the past 4 weeks, the gun ban's been in place. But those are state-level cases. What about the federal-level cases against the state's gun ban? We talked with Richard Pearson yesterday, and he kind of laid out some of what the latest is in the overview of the federal cases. Here is Richard Pearson.
So the Illinois State Rifle Association Second Amendment Foundation Firearm Policy Conference is one suit called Harold versus Raoul. And the NRA suit, the NSS suit, and the dealer suit have been rolled into that one. And also the suit out of Crawford County, where Attorney Thomas Magg has sued the county, was moved to the district court also. So right now we have 4 suits rolled into one. And so for us, I think that's good. We have the best Second Amendment attorneys in the country.
So again, that's ISRA Executive Director Richard Pearson talking about the cases he says are rolled into one. So that's the Illinois State Rifle Association's case. He also mentioned the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which the NRA supports that case. So that's two cases. A third case is the Thomas Magg Crawford County case that was transferred from state court to federal court in the Southern District. And then you have the case from the Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois, that case as well. So what happened was the state level case was transferred to federal courts, and a Obama appointed judge had that case, and it was thought that the state police and the Pritzker administration were trying to get all of those cases consolidated into that Obama appointed judge, saying that it was the first case filed. Well, it was the first case filed in state court, but not the first case filed in federal court. So the judge who had the first federally filed challenge of the state's gun ban actually said, no, this is the first case, and that was the State Rifle Association's case. So the Trump-appointed judge took the Crawford County case, and now you have him overseeing those four cases. So a Trump-appointed judge has those four cases, and we'll see how those progress. With the Illinois State Rifle Association's case, state police were granted an extension to reply to the State Rifle Association's motion for an injunction against the law, which would be statewide, not just for certain individuals that sued. But there's a clear difference between the State Rifle Association's case and other cases, including the Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois case, which is a coalition also behind that Illinois Gun Rights Alliance, Gun Save Life, and several others behind that case. We'll hear from Todd Vandermeide, who is a former contract lobbyist for the NRA, all-around gun law guru for the state of Illinois. He's the host of Freedom Steel on YouTube. Surely you've seen some of his analysis, but I chatted with him earlier this week just to kind of get an idea of the difference between the cases. So we heard from the State Rifle Association saying that these cases have been rolled together, but Todd Vandermeide having a little bit of a different take here as to what exactly is the difference between their case and the State Rifle Association's case, and we'll get to that coming up next here on WMAY. I'm Greg Bishop. You can always follow along, Bishop on Air, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Just search Bishop on Air and catch the show streaming live on WMAY News on YouTube or on YouTube, Bishop on Air. Facebook as well, WMAY News Facebook, Bishop on Air Facebook, practically everywhere, all right? Bishop on Air everywhere. I should probably make that my tagline. All right, stay tuned. We got much more coming up here, including Todd Vandermeide breaking down some of the analysis between the difference of his case with the FFIL and the State Rifle Association federal cases. So stay tuned. It's coming up next now, 6:31. Talking about the difference in some of the federal challenges against Illinois' gun ban. It's Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's News and Talk, live and local each and every weekday morning, 6 to 9. And that's Central Time. Some of you telling me online you're actually listening from, Pennsylvania? Was that what it was? Yeah, look at that. Liking your coverage on the insanity that is the Springfield State House. Well, yeah, it's not just this gun ban that passed in the last day of lame duck session, January 10th. It's the new General Assembly that's starting, and trust me, we're going to be covering a lot of what's going on there, including the conversation about what could possibly be a grand bargain for dealing with the state's unfunded pension liability while increasing taxes. Who knows if that's going to advance in the new General Assembly. But there's also questions about, should we allow non-citizens to vote in school board races? So we'll delve into that a bit as well. Some other things at the Illinois State House. And that's what I do outside of Springfield Morning News on WMAY. This is my part-time gig. My full-time gig is chasing people around the State House with a microphone and a camera, which we share a lot of that here on the air as well. But also somebody else says, hopefully the people of New Mexico do not not have to go through this. Expect he's talking about the gun ban. Now it's just a domino effect and a perfect time for China and Russia to finish us off. So interesting speculation there from a listener online. But let's get into some of the differences between the State Rifle Association's challenge of Illinois' gun ban and the Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois' challenge of the state's gun ban. We heard from Richard Pearson, Illinois State Rifle Association Executive Director, yesterday. He talked about the Second Amendment issues that they're really going after and how he said all of these cases, the ISRA case, the NRA case, the Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois case, and a Crawford County case that was transferred from state court to federal court, Pearson said they're all being rolled together. Well, I talked with Todd Vandermeide. He's with the Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois case, and he gave us a bit of an understanding of what at least he believes is the key difference here, and some crucial words.
Well, there's two different things. There's being combined and then there's being consolidated. And we haven't seen what the state and or the judge wants to do with this part. We will make our arguments. We are preparing a separate case on magazines because we think some of our arguments on magazines are very different than what we have seen argued so far. And, we'll see how the judge wants to proceed. In California, they took all the cases and the judge had like gun day. There were 5 different hearings on 5 different cases. It depends on what this judge wants to do with his calendar for judicial efficiency. And we'll see. We haven't made one argument one way or the other than we didn't want to be in front of that other judge when they moved that case up there and we're changing out district precedent on how to handle low numbered cases. So it just depends on how the judge wants to divide up the time. And we want to make sure that all of our arguments. Now, there's naturally a lot of overlap between the gun portion. And I think there just may be, some moderate differences between how we get to those arguments. And then the other guys are arguing magazines straight off the bat. And we are, arguing about parts, repairs, and those kinds of things, as well as a bit more on the right to sell, because don't forget that the way this bill's written right now, we have FFLs that have guns in for repair that do not believe they can return them to their owners.
So again, we're hearing from Todd Vandermeide. He's a longtime Illinois gun law expert. He's testified in front of the House and Senate here in Illinois time and again in his own capacity as either an individual or as a lobbyist. And he's really been warning lawmakers that Supreme Court precedent now is leaning towards the Second Amendment being a fundamental civil right. And he points to some of these other cases across the states, across the country, rather, that are essentially saying, listen, you can't treat the Second Amendment different than the First Amendment. If somebody is, in a civil court and there's a civil order against them, they don't lose their First Amendment rights. So they shouldn't lose their Second Amendment rights. Same thing goes for cannabis users. Another case that was out of, I believe, Oklahoma in the past week or so, where you had a federal judge say that cannabis use is not a prerequisite for diminishing somebody's rights. You don't lose your First Amendment rights to speech if you consume cannabis. So you shouldn't lose your Second Amendment right if you consume cannabis, according to the recent federal ruling. Now, of course, those particular rulings may have to go back all the way up to the Illinois Supreme Court. We shall see. But those rulings were made based off of Supreme Court precedent, essentially saying you can't balance civil liberties against perceived public safety. Civil liberties are civil liberties for everybody. And that's just my kind of layman way of explaining what the U.S. Supreme Court has set as precedent for the Second Amendment. But Vandermeide continues a bit here to talk a bit more about the cases.
That's what I thought. That's why I said, I kind of gave you the chance. I know your editing skills.
I am an editing master.
You can cut that stuff up, but Just
So, look, we'll of course have more conversations with Todd and others here on WMAY as we continue to track this, because now it's a month in and you've got lawsuits stacking up in federal and state courts. So we'll, of course, get to a lot more of all of that in the days ahead. Follow along with Bishop on Air on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and